Hello everyone and welcome into the FedEx Preview Show. I'm Jonathan Merryman, joined by Marty Snider of NBC Sports. Marty, Richmond, Martin Truex Jr. finally gets that short track win, but I want to know if you think he's caught the likes of the 11, the 18, the 2, and the 22 in terms of contenders every week now that the monkey's off his back.
You know, I don't think so quite yet. I think he and Cole Pern are still really trying to figure out the system at Joe Gibbs Racing, so there's some nuances there. I think Richmond, perfect place for them to get that first win of the 2019 season. You know, mile-and-a-half tracks, I think they're still trying to get their way a little bit. I think Fridays, in talking to Martin and talking to Cole Pern, need to get a lot better for that racing. They need to unload much better, and that's really where they're missing it. And honestly, they feel like because they're missing it on Fridays, it's hurting their Sundays. They're always having to come back through the field, make all these passes. I think they'll get there, but they're not quite to the level of their teammates yet, Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch.
All right, let's move on to Talladega. We're going to see a new aero package at Talladega. So this is kind of unprecedented. We got a 9-inch spoiler on the back of these cars. We have something to keep the track bar from letting the car go all the way down on the ground, so they're trying to jack these things
and no
up.
restrictor plates.
No restrictor plates.
For the first time in ever.
Yeah, so these things are going to punch a big hole. What do we expect to see? Some of these guys tested in Daytona this package.
And there were only a handful of cars that tested at Daytona, so I think the question of what are we going to see, nobody really knows. And talking to a lot of crew chiefs this week, they say Friday, Saturday practices are going to be very busy. Like normally they would sit out those practices worried about their race car. Not this weekend. There's going to be a lot of practice because they want to understand how these cars pull up, how they behave in the draft. They want to get a big pack out there because you talk about that test that happened after the Daytona 500 on Monday. There are only a handful of cars there. They really didn't get a lot of information from that test, but from everything they see in the wind tunnel, this should punch a bigger hole in the air. This should provide for better racing. I think we're going to see two wide, much racier pack, but the pack is certainly going to be a lot tighter pack.
All right, let's talk about Denny Hamlin, Brad Keselowski, and Joey Logano. The three drivers in the Cup Series right now on top of the super speedway racing game.
Right.
So can you bet against those guys this weekend?
Well, I think it's tough to bet against those guys because to me, what's going to play out in this package is still going to be the drivers who are aggressive. All the drivers you named off, Jonathan, are very aggressive when it comes to restrictor plate racing. You have to be up front. You have to dictate pace, and I think that's what those drivers do, and that's why they win all these restrictor plate races. It's not happenstance. They do avoid the wrecks, and sometimes they get in them. We saw that happen to Brad Keselowski in the Daytona 500, but I think you're going to see these guys be up front once again. Brad and Joey, especially at Talladega, they seem to run up front. So I think no matter what this package brings, you're going to see those same guys be up front because they're aggressive and because of the way they play the draft. I think you can throw a few other drivers in that mix as well.
All right, so we talked about the three guys. Who are some other guys we're watching? Maybe a Stenhouse or a Almirola?
I think Stenhouse, Almirola is very good. I think Kevin Harvick's very good, obviously, at this game. I think Chase Elliott's very good at this game. Doesn't get a lot of recognition, but he runs up front in these restrictor plate races and is willing to put himself up front. And that's what it takes anymore. The days of running in the back of the pack and kind of fighting your way and winning a race are over. You can run in the back of the pack and maybe get back to a top 10, but you have to understand the energy of the pack. Talking to Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Jeff Burton, who we work with at NBC, they always talk about the energy of the pack, learning what cars are good, learning what cars can run up front, what cars you can work with and what cars you can't work with. That's key throughout the day, so you got to be up front. Another thing I'm interested in seeing, Jonathan, we've seen the Fords work together so well. That's why Joey and Brad have been so good, because you have so many Fords, 17 of them, working together in a race. And we saw at Daytona, Hendrick Motorsports and Joe Gibbs Racing work together. I'm interested to see if that plays out as well, because it really helped the JGR cars because they were the ones up front at the end of the Daytona 500.
All right, so when it's all said and done, who is Marty Snider picking to win this thing?
I'm going to go with a little bit of a different name and not one of the ones that we talked about as a favorite. I'm going to go with Chase Elliott. I think he has shown the ability to run up front at these races. Talladega seems to be a little bit better of a racetrack for him than Daytona, and I think Alan Gustafson is very good at figuring out new packages very quickly, so I think Chase Elliott's going to be very strong this weekend. You know, it's weird. These stats always find a way to work themselves out, but Chevy, if they don't win this weekend, I think it goes back to like 1970-something when they've gone this deep into the season without a win. I think Chase Elliott gets in victory lane this weekend.
All right, that is a long time. I'm going to pick the 22 of Joey Logano. I talked to Todd Gordon and Joey after Daytona. They thought they had the best car. Now, granted, new aero package. I think he's going to have a chip on his shoulder. He wants to come out there, get another win, flex his muscles just a couple, a little bit more. I do think the 22 ends up in victory lane. All right, don't miss the Geico 500 this weekend. It is Sunday on Fox, 2 p.m. Has all the makings to be a wild finish down in Alabama.